Before we go any further, if you're listening to this and you feel tired, overwhelmed, or quietly holding yourself together, stay with me. And if this message reaches your heart, let it be your moment to pause, breathe, and receive what grace has already been offering you. So many of us have been taught to hide our weakness, to smile when we're breaking, to show strength even when we're exhausted. We've learned how to perform resilience so well that no one ever asks if we're okay anymore. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that our weakness disqualified us, that we had to fix ourselves before we could be loved, healed, or helped. But weakness was never meant to push you away from grace. It was meant to draw you into it. Grace does not wait for you to become strong. Grace meets you exactly where you are, messy, uncertain, tired, and still trying. The moments you're most ashamed of, the parts of your story you wish you could erase, the seasons where you feel like you didn't show up the way you should have. Those are not proof that you failed. They are invitations for grace to step in where you've reached the end of yourself. We often think strength is what gets us through life. But if that were true, we wouldn't be so burned out, so anxious, so overwhelmed by trying to hold everything together. Strength has limits. Effort runs out. Control eventually slips. And when that happens, we panic, not realizing that the breaking point is often the meeting point. Weakness is where pretending stops. It's where you finally admit, I can't do this on my own anymore. And that admission isn't defeat. It's honesty. It's the moment you stop performing and start receiving. Grace doesn't enter through perfection. It enters through surrender. There is something deeply human about needing help, yet we treat it like a flaw. Especially as women, we've been praised for being strong, dependable, and selfless. We carry families, careers, expectations, and emotional labor quietly, often without complaint. And when we finally feel ourselves slipping, we blame ourselves for not being able to handle it all. But grace was never meant to support a life built on self-reliance alone. Grace shows up when your strength gives out, when you don't have the words, when you're tired of being brave, when all you can do is whisper, I need help. That whisper is not weakness, it's faith, it's trust, it's the doorway. You don't have to clean yourself up to qualify for grace. You don't have to explain your pain perfectly. You don't have to justify why you're struggling. Grace already understands. It covers what you can't fix, and it holds what you can't carry. And here's the part we don't talk about enough. Weakness doesn't mean you're falling behind. It often means you're growing in ways strength alone could never teach you. Weakness softens you. It deepens compassion. It shifts your priorities. It teaches you to lean instead of striving, to trust instead of forcing. Grace doesn't shame you for being weak. It stays with you in it. It doesn't rush you through healing. It doesn't pressure you to move faster than your heart can handle. Grace is patient. Grace is gentle. Grace understands timing. You may feel like your weakness makes you less capable, less worthy, less prepared, but grace doesn't see you that way. Grace sees potential where you see limitation. It sees purpose where you see failure. It sees a future still unfolding, even when the present feels heavy. Some of the most powerful transformations don't happen when everything is going right. They happen when you're honest enough to admit something is wrong, when you stop pretending you're okay and allow grace to sit with you in the truth, not to judge you, but to strengthen you from the inside out. You are not behind because you're struggling. You're not broken because you're tired, and you're not disqualified because you feel weak. You are human, and grace was made for moments exactly like this. So if today all you have is honesty, bring that. If all you have is weariness, bring that too. Grace doesn't requires strength. It supplies it. And your weakness is not the end of your story. It's the place where grace begins to carry you forward. There is an unspoken pressure many of us live under, the pressure to always be strong, strong enough to handle it, strong enough to keep going, strong enough to smile through pain and still show up for everyone else. Somewhere along the way, strength stopped being a resource and started becoming a requirement. And when you can't meet that requirement, you don't just feel tired, you feel guilty. You tell yourself, you should be able to handle this by now. You replay moments where you think you should have done better, been better, pushed harder. And instead of giving yourself compassion, you demand more from yourself than you would ever expect from someone you love. That kind of pressure doesn't make you resilient. It makes you exhausted. The truth is, you were never meant to be strong all the time. Constant strength is not sustainable, and pretending otherwise is what keeps so many women silently breaking. Strength has seasons. Courage has limits. Even the strongest hearts need rest, support, and grace. And admitting that doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. There's a difference between resilience and self-abandonment. Resilience says, I'm doing my best. Self-abandonment says, I'm not allowed to fall apart. One builds you up. The other slowly wears you down. When you feel like you have to carry everything without help, pause without emotion, you're not being brave, you're surviving. And survival mode is not where healing happens. So many of us have learned to equate rest with laziness, vulnerability with failure, and asking for help with weakness. We've been praised for being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who always shows up. And while that praise feels good, it can quietly trap you, because once people expect strength from you, they don't always make space for your humanity. But grace does. Grace does not demand that you hold it all together. Grace does not shame you for feeling overwhelmed. Grace does not leave when you finally admit, I can't do this anymore. In fact, that's often the moment grace moves closest. You don't have to be strong for grace to work. Grace isn't activated by performance. It responds to honesty. When you stop pretending you're okay and allow yourself to be real, you create space for grace to meet you where you are, not where you think you should be. There is relief in letting go of the idea that you have to be unbreakable. You don't. You're allowed to feel tired without explaining why. You're allowed to grieve what didn't work out. You're allowed to feel unsure without rushing yourself into answers. You're allowed to rest without earning it first. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about knowing you don't have to get back up alone. And some seasons aren't asking you to be strong at all. They're asking you to be open to support, open to grace, open to the idea that you don't have to carry everything by yourself. When you release the pressure to always be strong, something shifts inside you. Your body relaxes, your breathing slows, your heart softens. You stop fighting yourself for feeling the way you do. And in that softer place, healing begins. Grace meets you in your vulnerability, not your performance. It covers the moments you feel like you're failing. It holds you steady when your confidence is gone. It gives you permission to rest without shame and to move forward without pretending. You don't have to prove your worth through endurance. You don't have to earn compassion by suffering quietly. You don't have to stay strong just so others don't feel uncomfortable. You are allowed to be human, fully, honestly, without apology. And here's what's beautiful about grace. When you stop forcing strength, grace doesn't leave you empty. It restores you slowly, gently, in ways that last longer than willpower ever could. You come back steadier, not harder, wiser, not colder, strong again, but this time not alone. So release the burden of always having it together. Let go of the belief that you have to carry everything on your own. You were never meant to be strong all the time. You were meant to be supported, sustained, and held by grace when strength runs out. There comes a point in every struggle where effort reaches its limit. You've tried to stay positive. You've prayed. You've planned. You've pushed yourself to keep going even when your heart was tired. And still, the situation hasn't shifted the way you hoped it would. That's usually the moment when frustration sets in, when you start questioning yourself and wondering what more you're supposed to do. But what if that moment isn't asking for more effort? What if it's inviting you into grace? We're conditioned to believe that if something isn't working, the answer is always to try harder, work harder, be stronger, stay up later, carry more. But grace doesn't respond to exhaustion the way effort does. Grace shows up when effort runs out, not to shame you for being tired, but to support you when you can't keep carrying the weight on your own. There's a quiet relief in admitting that you don't have the strength to push anymore, not because you've failed, but because you've reached the end of what self-reliance can do. Grace doesn't replace responsibility, but it does replace pressure. It steps in when you've done what you can and acknowledges that being human comes with limits. So many women feel like they have to earn rest, earn support, earn compassion by proving how much they can endure. But grace isn't a reward for endurance. It's a gift for surrender. It meets you when you stop pretending you're fine and finally say, I need help. That moment isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Grace carries what effort cannot. It holds you steady when your plans fall apart. It sustains you when answers are slow to come. It gives you peace in the middle of uncertainty, not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer trying to resolve everything by yourself. Sometimes grace looks like strength you didn't know you had. Other times it looks like rest you didn't think you were allowed to take. It might come through a conversation that reminds you you're not alone, or through a quiet sense of calm when nothing externally has changed. Grace doesn't always fix the situation immediately, but it changes how you are held within it. When effort runs out, grace doesn't rush you. It doesn't demand quick faith or perfect trust. It stays. It sits with you in the unanswered questions and the unfinished healing. It reminds you that your value is not measured by productivity or performance, but by presence. There's something powerful about recognizing the difference between striving and trusting. Striving says, if I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart. Trust says, even if I can't hold this together, I won't fall apart. Grace lives in that trust. It allows you to breathe again, to soften your grip, to stop fighting what you can't control. Effort alone can keep you moving, but grace is what keeps you grounded. Without grace, effort leads to burnout. With grace, even small steps feel sustainable. You beg in to move forward without forcing progress. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can carry and start honoring your need to be carried sometimes. And here's the part that changes everything. Grace doesn't only show up after you collapse. It's available the moment you acknowledge your limits. You don't have to reach complete exhaustion to receive support. You don't have to hit rock bottom to be held. Grace is already present, waiting for you to stop resisting it. When you allow grace to work where effort has failed, something inside you begins to heal. You stop blaming yourself for being tired. You stop seeing rest as weakness. You stop equating struggle with failure. You start understanding that seasons of limitation are not setbacks. They're invitations to rely on something deeper than willpower. Grace teaches you that you don't have to have it all figured out to keep moving forward. It carries you step by step, day by day, moment by moment. It doesn't overwhelm you with what's next. It gives you just enough strength for now. So if you're in a place where effort feels heavy and answers feel far away, don't panic. Don't push harder out of fear. Pause, breathe. Let grace do what effort never could. Because when your strength runs out, grace doesn't, and it will sustain you until you're strong again. There's a painful lie that often settles into our hearts during hard seasons. The lie that says this struggle is meaningless, that if you're hurting, confused, or tired, something must have gone wrong. That if life were working the way it should, you wouldn't be walking through this kind of pain. And when that lie takes hold, it doesn't just make the struggle heavier, it makes it lonely. But your struggle is not wasted. Not one tear, not one sleepless night, not one moment where you wondered how you were going to make it through. None of it is empty. Even when it doesn't make sense yet, something is being formed in you that comfort could never produce. We often think purpose only lives in the good seasons, the wins, the breakthroughs, the answered prayers. But some of the deepest shaping happens in the moments you would never choose. The moments where you're stripped of control, where plans fall apart, where you're forced to slow down and feel what you've been avoiding. Those moments don't feel productive, but they are transformative. Pain has a way of revealing what really matters. It strips away what's superficial and forces you to confront what's real. In struggle, you learn what you can live without and what you absolutely cannot. You learn the difference between what looks strong and what actually sustains you. You learn where you've been surviving instead of healing. There are parts of you that would never awaken without resistance, compassion, empathy, wisdom, depth. These things are not learned in ease. They're learned in endurance. And that doesn't mean the pain was good. It means it wasn't pointless. So many women aim themselves for struggling, as if hardship is a personal failure, as if strength means never being affected by what you go through. But struggle doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. It means you're engaged with life, not numb to it. And grace doesn't waste humanity, it redeems it. Your struggle is teaching you how to lean instead of striving, how to receive instead of performing, how to rest without guilt. These lessons don't feel empowering while you're learning them, but they change the way you live forever. You don't come out harder, you come out wiser, softer in the right places, stronger where it counts. Sometimes the struggle is less about fixing the situation and more about reshaping you within it. It's teaching you boundaries you never had, teaching you to say no without explaining yourself, teaching you to value peace over approval, teaching you that your worth is not tied to how much you can endure. And even when the pain came from something unfair, something you didn't choose or deserve, it still doesn't get the final word. Grace has a way of weaving purpose into places that feel broken, not by erasing the pain, but by transforming how it lives inside you. One day, you'll look back and realize that the season you thought was holding you back was actually slowing you down so you wouldn't lose yourself. That the struggle protected you from rushing into something you weren't ready to carry. That the delay saved you from an outcome that would have cost you your peace. Your story is not being ruined by what you're going through. It's being refined. And refinement doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in pressure, not to crush you, but to clarify you. You may not see it yet, but there will come a time when you recognize the strength you gained, the clarity you developed, and the resilience that grew quietly while you were just trying to survive. And you'll realize that even in the hardest moments, you were not abandoned. You were being shaped. So don't rush your healing. Don't dismiss your pain. Don't minimize what this season is teaching you. Nothing you're walking through is random and nothing you're carrying is unseen, because even this struggle is working for you and it will not be wasted. There are seasons in life when strength feels like a foreign language, when even getting out of bed feels like a victory, when you've prayed, planned, pushed, and persisted, and you still feel empty. And in those moments, we often tell ourselves we should be doing more, believing harder, holding it together better. But some seasons are not about proving strength. Some seasons are about being carried. Grace carries you when you can't carry yourself. There comes a point where effort reaches its limit, where motivation dries up, where discipline alone can't hold you steady anymore. And that's not failure. That's humanity. That's the moment when grace steps in and says, you don't have to muscle your way through this. So many women are exhausted, not because life is hard, but because they believe they have to be strong all the time, strong for their family, strong at work, strong in faith, strong in public, strong in private. And slowly, silently, that pressure becomes unbearable. Grace was never meant to be an accessory to your strength. It was meant to be your support when strength runs out. Grace doesn't shame you for being tired. It doesn't demand explanations. It doesn't ask you to perform. It simply holds you when you're too weary to hold yourself together. There are moments when the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to be okay, when survival is enough, when showing up imperfectly is still showing up. And grace honors that. It meets you in the mess, not after you clean it up. Sometimes being carried looks like rest you didn't think you deserved. It looks like tears you finally allowed yourself to cry. It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like admitting you need help, and none of that makes you weak. It makes you honest. We love stories of triumph, but we rarely talk about the quiet mercy of endurance. The kind where you don't feel victorious, but you're still here, still breathing, still believing, even if that belief feels fragile. Grace carries you through those in-between moments, the ones that don't look miraculous, but are sacred all the same. You weren't created to carry everything alone, not the pressure, not the pain, not the unanswered questions. Are weights that were never meant to sit on your shoulders, no matter how capable you are. And when you finally release them, grace doesn't let you fall. It lifts you. Being carried doesn't mean you stop moving forward. It means you stop dragging yourself forward by force. It means allowing God's strength to do what yours cannot. It means trusting that even when you feel passive, something powerful is still happening beneath the surface. Some days, grace carries you through a conversation you didn't want to have. Some days, it carries you through silence when words won't come. Some days it carries you through disappointment that still aches. And some days it simply carries you through the day. And that's enough. You don't have to understand how it works to benefit from it. You don't have to feel spiritual to receive it. Grace is not a reward for good behavior. It's a gift for weary hearts. And the moment you stop resisting rest, you begin to feel its support. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're not holding your life together by sheer willpower, that even on your weakest days, you're not alone, that something greater is sustaining you when you feel like you're barely making it. And one day you'll realize that the season you thought you were failing in was actually the season you were being carried the most. That the moments you felt least capable were the moments grace was doing its deepest work. You don't have to rush out of this season. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to apologize for needing help. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be supported. Let grace do what it was always meant to do, because when you can't carry yourself anymore, grace already has you. There comes a moment, usually long after the tears have dried and the chaos has quieted, when you look back and realize something unexpected. You're still standing, not because everything worked out the way you planned, but because grace held you together when you didn't think you'd survive it. And that's when you understand that this journey wasn't just about getting through the struggle. It was about who you were becoming along the way. You don't come out of hard seasons the same. And that's not a loss. That's growth. What tried to break you actually built you. What drained you refined you. What humbled you deepened you. You didn't just endure, you evolved. And the strength you carry now isn't loud or performative. It's quiet. It's steady. It's rooted in knowing you've already faced things you once thought would destroy you. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes from walking through fire and discovering you're still whole. You stop rushing people's approval. You stop chasing things that cost you your peace. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your process, because struggle has a way of clarifying what matters and who doesn't. You learn how to listen to yourself again. You learn the power of boundaries. You learn that rest is not weakness and asking for help is not failure. You learn that faith doesn't mean certainty. It means trust in the middle of uncertainty. And that lesson changes how you move through life. You become more compassionate, not just toward others, but toward yourself. You stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know back then. You stop replaying old mistakes like they're still happening. You forgive yourself for surviving the only way you knew how. That self-grace is a strength you didn't have before. And here's the beautiful part. The resilience you gained wasn't forced. It was formed quietly, gradually, in moments when you thought nothing was happening. While you were just trying to make it through the day, grace was reshaping your character, teaching you endurance without bitterness, confidence without arrogance, faith without fear. You begin to trust yourself again, not because life got easier, but because you know now that you can handle hard things. You've learned how to breathe through discomfort, how to pause instead of panic, how to stand firm without becoming rigid. That's strength you can't fake. The version of you that emerges is wiser with words, slower to react, quicker to pray, and more intentional with energy. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth. You know it. You no longer need validation to move forward. You have peace guiding you instead. And yes, there may still be scars, but scars are not signs of defeat. They're proof of healing. They tell a story of survival, of grace, of restoration. They remind you that what once hurt you no longer controls you. One day, someone will come to you in their own season of struggle, and you won't have to give them cliches. Your presence will be the message. Your calm will speak louder than words. Your testimony won't be polished. It will be real. And that's how grace multiplies. You'll recognize that the strength you carry now is not self-made. It's grace-made. It's built on surrender, not striving, on trust, not control, on faith that held on even when answers didn't come. You didn't just survive this season. You were prepared by it. And what's ahead of you requires exactly the depth, wisdom, and strength you gain through what you've already overcome. So stand tall, not because life is perfect, but because grace has proven faithful. You came through stronger, wiser, and still standing.